Welcome to The Big Story. I'm Olivia Quay. Subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss an episode. Singapore's total employment growth at an all-time high in 2022, growing at an unprecedented rate to 2.9% above its pre-pandemic 2019 level. Resident employment up by 26,300, and the increase is mostly in outward-oriented sectors like financial services and information and communications. Non-resident employment grew by over 201,000, which is 88% of the overall rise. That's mainly due to the hiring of work permit holders in sectors like construction and manufacturing. Meanwhile, overall unemployment fell to 2.1% from 2.7% in 2021. And retrenchments in the fourth quarter more than doubled from Q3, jumping from 1,330 to nearly 3,000. The bulk was in the electronics and manufacturing sectors, followed by wholesale trade and information and communications, with business restructuring as the top reason for these job cuts. Total retrenchments, though, still lower than pre-pandemic levels. I'm now joined by Patrick Tay, Assistant Secretary General at NTUC. Patrick, with total employment now above the pre-pandemic level and unemployment also dropping, do you think these point to a positive trend in Singapore's labour landscape this year?
I must say, with the latest labour market figures in 2022, I think it's very positive. We do see a very, very tight labour market. I think overall the figures have been largely positive. It's strong total employment in 2022, lower retrenchment numbers, lower unemployment rates across the board, and of course lower long-term unemployment, I think, which is important. But I think moving into 2023, there are significant headwinds, so I think we have to be mindful, because if you look at the Q4 labour market figures, point to some elevation in terms of number of retrenchments as well.
Well, let's talk about the headwinds that you mentioned. What challenges do you foresee in 2023? Of course, there's that looming cloud of inflation.
Yes, I think besides inflation, we have always the geopolitical challenges across the globe. And I think there's global volatility in terms of slowing in demand in certain sectors. So I think you'll be relatively uneven in 2023. And in particular, in the first half of 2022, I'm suspecting and forecasting that the layoff numbers will mirror very much like Q4 2022, where sort of like an uptick in layoff numbers. I think it will continue likewise, particularly in sectors such as electronics manufacturing. I think that sector contributed to the last quarter 2022 numbers. And I think it will continue to contribute greatly to the first half 2023 numbers. However, I think in sectors such as ICT and wholesale and retail trade, where they do also contribute to the layoff numbers in 2022, I foresee in sectors such as ICT, although there are layoffs that we hear of and witness, I think most of them will be able to segue into openings in tech-related sectors or adjacent sectors, or even other sectors where there's high demand for tech talent.
Well, Patrick, in a recent roundtable by the Straits Times and the Business Times, Deputy Prime Minister Lawrence Wong said in any economy there would be some underlying unemployment rate. It's never zero, and we are almost at full employment now. So, Patrick, what's the ideal state to be in, and what are we trying to achieve?
I mean, look at our current numbers for 2022 and moving into 2023. At overall 2.2% unemployment rate, I think it's almost back to pre-pandemic. Globally, that's a relatively low unemployment rate. Even if you look at resident unemployment, 2.9%, citizenry unemployment, 3%, these are low figures by far if you ask economists and labor economists. However, I think structural unemployment still persists. We have skills, jobs, expectations mismatch in various segments, in various sectors where there's lots of opportunities, vacancies, but we don't have people with the necessary skills, abilities and capabilities to take on those jobs. So I think ideally, yes, we want to do a few things. Firstly, keep unemployment rates as low as possible. It can't be perfectly zero, but we try to keep it as low as possible. We want strong employment numbers, that's second. And third, we want lower long-term unemployment rates, because we also realize through labor market stats that when you stay out of job for a prolonged period, it's harder to re-enter and rejoin back into the workforce. So very, very important to have lower long-term unemployment rates. And finally, a very strong labor force participation rate, because as we know, in Singapore, we are burning the candles at both ends. We have lower fertility rates and of course, longer life expectancy and the aging population. And therefore, every worker matters. So we want everyone to participate where able, where keen, and therefore labor force participation rate is something which we hope we can bring up as well.
As always, many thanks to Patrick Tay, NTUC's Assistant Secretary General. In the name of safety, Grab Singapore is introducing a new feature on its app that allows passengers and drivers to record audio, which will roll out progressively as part of a trial from March 21st. The recordings can be used to resolve safety incidents like accidents and harassment more efficiently. And if you're concerned about privacy, not to worry, because both parties need to give consent before a recording takes place. This AudioProtect feature can be enabled under account safety settings after a ride is booked, and once activated, it remains the default setting for future rides until it's disabled. The recordings cannot be accessed by either the passenger or driver, only by Grab's safety team if a safety-related incident occurs. Central Narcotics Bureau officers have arrested 3 Singaporeans suspected of drug trafficking offences. The operation took place at Ubi Avenue 1 and Bukit Timah, and among the items seized were $118,000 worth of narcotics, as well as an airsoft pistol, machetes and swords. A Singaporean couple were killed while on holiday in India along with a driver when a speeding tanker rammed their car. It's the latest in a string of overseas accidents involving Singaporeans this year. On Sunday morning, they had chartered a car and driver to take them from Chennai to a temple in Tirupati. The 130-kilometer drive was expected to take about 3.5 hours, but when they were about halfway through the drive, a speeding oil tanker lorry rammed into the car and dragged it off the road into a field. The driver of the tanker initially fled the scene, causing the police to launch a manhunt, but it's later reported that the man had been arrested. According to local authorities, the bodies had to be extricated from the mangled wreck and were later taken to hospital for autopsy. And in sports, it's joy for football fans. FIFA have approved the expansion of the 2026 World Cup to feature more teams and matches. The next edition, co-hosted by the US, Canada and Mexico, will now involve a record 48 teams and 104 matches. It'll also see the 8 best third-place teams moving into the knockout stages alongside the top 2 teams from each group. The aim of the revised format is to mitigate the risk of collusion as well as to balance the rest time for each team. Those are our top stories for today. Visit straitstimes.com for more news and our YouTube channel for more videos. Subscribe by hitting the red button below. I'm Olivia Quay. See you tomorrow on The Big Story.